Welcome into the Blogger Bowl Week 7. Yeah, I can't believe it's already Week 7 preview odds predictions. Phil, I'm just going to start with you. This is a big week for you. Notre Dame has a nice game with Stanford. Our Vols host Alabama in one of their biggest games of the year. And Florida State has a chance. Your Noles, they got a little chance here against Clemson at home to make some noise here. How are you feeling for your big three teams? And we got a Bears game tonight.
We got a Bears game tonight. Can I sprinkle in my big fourth with my Fighting Illini being ranked 24th?
That's true.
Can I call them?
No, you're Chase Brown. They're not your Fighting Illini. It's your Chase Brown.
My Chase Browns. They have a big game this weekend too. So I'm very excited just for this weekend in college football. This is like one of those weekends where you just look at the slate and you're like, oh man, my couch is going to have just indents in it.
The old couch would have been great for this weekend. But yeah, like not only is this a great slate, I think we mentioned it Tuesday. They're spread out perfectly. We have a great game in the morning with the big noon kickoff. Tennessee and Alabama there's a couple games in the afternoon, but Tennessee, Alabama highlights the afternoon. Then at night, I believe we have Utah, USC. Correct? That's a 7 p.m. or 6:30, 8 p.m. kick, whatever. So like, we don't have to worry about having. I mean, I'm still going to have a couple TVs on, but divide my attention between these awesome matchups can kind of equally spread it out throughout the day. So I'm really excited. This is going to be an awesome day.
Yeah, I've got to look up another one. You do need the multiple TV setup for the mid-afternoon.
Is that TCU Oklahoma State?
3:30 or 2:30 your time. Also, you need 3 devices because also at 3:30 on ESPN Plus, the game of the day, South Dakota State, North Dakota State. So all 3 of those games.
Very, very seriously, we'll love that game.
Oh, it depends on my game. So here's my conundrum this weekend. I will just call him my nephew because it's my fiance's nephew and it's too wordy. My nephew's 4th birthday party is at 10 a.m. on Saturday. So like, I don't know how long we're going to be gone, but I'm probably going to miss at least the first half, if not the entire early window. She doesn't watch
TVs at this party.
I doubt it. It's at like the Children's Museum, but I do have a telephone.
And was hoping it was like a home or something.
Texas plays. No, it's like the Connecticut Children's Museum or something like that. It's a really cool place. It's just whatever.
Find a security guard who's got a nice old TV in his in like the office.
Matt, it's the year 2022. I have a device that's got YouTube TV on it. The problem is Texas plays at noon, so that's what I'd be watching instead of Michigan, Penn State. So I might have to record it, go back and watch that one. Hopefully I don't she doesn't watch this show, so hopefully I don't get roped into having to do anything after the party's over. Hopefully we get to go home and I can just watch football the rest of the day and do that. I have a question for the two of you, and I would ask this regardless of what team you two rooted for, but the fact that it tangentially involves Notre Dame makes it funny to me, and I am an asshole, and I apologize in advance.
That's okay.
If Marshall were to lose the rest of its games, which is possible, but I don't think is super likely, but it's possible. And we're to go 3-9 with wins, 2 wins against FCS teams and a win against Notre Dame, who very well might finish the season 10 and let's say 9-3. I think is fair. Let's say they split USC and Clemson and they go 9-3. If Marshall goes 3-9 with 2 FCS wins and a win over a 9-3 Notre Dame team, would that be the funniest season in college football history?
That'd be a pretty wild one.
Yeah, because it's like Notre Dame would be a fringe playoff team at that point with an only loss if they playing Clemson and USC for like a potential to be in the playoff, almost a shoe-in New Year's 6 game. So to have that spoiled by like Marshall, who looked pretty good early in the season, and then just was like, we beat Notre Dame, we're out.
We're done. We did our recruiting for the year.
Granted, it was the letdown spot of all letdown spots. They lost to Bowling Green. They lost to Troy and didn't have 200 yards of offense, and they lost last night by double digits at home to Louisiana. I did take a little bit of the Louisiana plus 10.5 and was sweating it early because they should have been up by a lot, and then I think they were trailing them at halftime. I was like, this would be one of those games where they end up losing 21-10, but nope, Marshall is not great. Nevertheless,
it's tough to look back on that one as a Notre Dame fan, but I think long term, even if they win that game and they are playing for a playoff bid, they're still nowhere near the top 3 tiers. And say they do win that game and then they split, somehow they do get to a playoff. It's still probably same old Notre Dame just because the talent isn't quite there this year. And I do think the loss to Marshall in the first half of Cal was a very important kind of look in the mirror moment for Marcus Freeman, and that kind of the staff is just a new staff together and new head coach, kind of a little bit of a wake up call moment. It seems like they've rebounded from that. So if the wake up call growing pains year turns into an 8-4 or a 9-3 season with a win over USC or Clemson, if they can pull off one of those, I would be more than okay with that, because I think that's almost more of a productive year than just same old playoff getting blown out again. And that is my spin zone for listening to Marshall.
That's way more analysis than I was anticipating, but
I mean, Dan, you got to start it on Notre Dame. You can't
asked a question about Notre Dame. I know
you can't get us started on Notre Dame.
It wasn't even so much about Notre Dame. It was more about Marshall. But
yeah, but you mentioned Notre Dame.
It's just funny because it was like, I mean, that was the ultimate. Hey, we beat Notre Dame. We're good for 2022. We'll see y'all next year. Like that's basically what the rest of their season has been.
They're gonna have a banner. They have a banner. They have a banner up in their gym. Like we
beat Notre Dame.
It's gonna be like 3-time FCS national champion, 1996, 97, whatever the years were that they won all those titles when Randy
Moss.
And then
Randy Moss.
We beat Notre Dame.
But enough of that. We will move on, and we will start with we're just going to do 4 big games this week because there are only 4 games that we think are massive games. We talked about it the other day. 3 games featuring teams that are 5-0 or better for the second time in the history of college football, and we're going to start in Knoxville, Tennessee, with our Vols here. Alabama, number 3 at number 6, Tennessee, a 3:30 game on CBS. Alabama, a 7-point favorite at FanDuel. The juice was starting to trend to maybe it might get to 7.5, but I don't think it will. It is held pretty steady at 7. 65.5 is the total. I know Phil's name bar says our Vols, but I'll only see Matt's shirt. So Matt, start us off. What do you expect to happen on Saturday?
Oh, unfortunately, it does look like Cedric Tillman's not going to play, or at least it's kind of trending that direction. So, barring some sort of last-minute miracle, that would that obviously hurts our Vols. We talked about it on Tuesday. Bryce Young is probably going to play, but how healthy is the shoulder? I mean, coming off a week where he had to sit out, and a sprained shoulder doesn't heal just right away, doesn't heal too quickly. I don't know if they're going to be able to stretch the field too much. And if Tennessee has a chance to, get up, get a couple quick scores early, stretch the field early on, it's so weird to say. Like, I'm not sure Alabama's built for a track meet with Tennessee. And this game sets up to be a track meet. If Hendon Hooker kind of looks unflappable at the moment, if he didn't get phased in that Florida game, I'm not sure when he's going to get phased, because things could have gone very wrong there. And I don't know, this Tennessee team feels just different to me, and I think that offense is very real, very legit. I'd feel a lot more comfortable if Cedric Tillman was playing, because I think that just adds another element. But again, weird to say, I'm not sure Alabama has the playmakers on the outside to get into a track meet. If they can control the pace and slow this down, and Jahmyr Gibbs can have 30 carries and run the ball effectively, that's their path to win. But if Tennessee's able to score and throw early and often, I'm not sure Alabama's built to hang with that.
Yeah, I kind of an interesting stat right now is obviously I think Bryce Young is probably going to play, but as you mentioned, Matt, how effective is he going to be if he's primarily focused on short to intermediary routes when they don't have a Jalen Waddle, when they don't have a Devontae Smith, a guy who takes that intermediate route, kind of like the Mac Jones playbook, and then just, absolutely burns through the secondary. So without a huge kind of burner, massive go-to guy on the wide receiver standpoint, and Bryce Young being a bit banged up, this leans towards a conservative game plan in which Tennessee is absolutely going to try to push the pace. So kind of interesting stat here is, so Tennessee has the 5th fastest time per play in the country. And so kind of what that lends itself to is a game where if Alabama is trying to control the clock, Tennessee is going to be doing the exact opposite. So the amount of chances that Alabama is going to have when they're playing that game plan is going to be slimmer. So they're going to have to be very effective in every single one of those drives if they're trying to slow pace it, because Tennessee, on the other hand, is going to try to turn around, go really fast, in which case, if there's a time for Tennessee to get a huge win like this, it is right now, versus an Alabama team that's not firing all cylinders, where Bryce Young is not fully healthy, a game at home, when Hooker is playing unbelievable so far this year. So things are stacked in Tennessee's favor right now, and they have a good coach. So it's not in the past, 10 years where it's been suspect head coaches. So this is really the recipe for it to happen this year. And the specific time of this year, if it was last week, obviously that would be ideal. The one thing that gives me pause is obviously Will Anderson. If Alabama can really get to Hooker early and have them, kind of behind the chains early, that's when that conservative game plan comes through. But at the end of the day, I do like Tennessee in this game. We've been rooting for the Vols all year. And this week, as I mentioned on Tuesday, is kind of like my just voodoo magic, go with my gut, don't care, just go, don't look at too many stats. And so I'm picking the Tennessee money line straight up on this one.
So we talked about it on Tuesday, why the line felt fishy to me. I try to approach this from the standpoint of, at least in my research, of why Alabama should be a 7-point favorite, or why Alabama could win this game by 7 points or more. And there are two things that I kind of keyed in on that trend positively for them, and that's making the assumption Bryce Young is going to play. I guess the third thing that I just kind of thought about based on Phil's point, and that was, I don't think they're going to be conservative with Bryce Young, because if they weren't conservative with Jalen Milroe, who clearly was not ready to be Bryce Young and is not Bryce Young, I don't know why they would be conservative. Like, I don't trust that Bill O'Brien's going to think that way. And nor necessarily should they. Tennessee is 98th in the country in EPA per pass play defense, 99th in passing down success rate. So when teams have to throw the ball on Tennessee, they have found a lot of success doing so. Now, a lot of that is dictated by game state. Like, obviously, the Tennessee offense is going to put pressure on opposing offenses to try to keep up with them. But nevertheless, they have been vulnerable in the secondary. And with a quarterback like Bryce Young, he can pick them apart if they can't get to them. Now, Alabama, they are 12th in the country in sack rate. That number dips to 27th on passing downs, but they've been pretty good at getting to the quarterback. You brought up Will Anderson. I think it's a huge, huge opportunity for him to kind of show the country once again that he might be the best football player in America. Food for thought, Will Anderson through 6 games last year, 39 tackles, 11 tackles for a loss, 3 sacks, 0 interceptions, 4 quarterback hurries. Will Anderson through 6 games so far this year, 29 tackles, 10 tackles for a loss, 5 sacks, 1 interception, and 9 quarterback hurries. He had his breakout game last year in week 7, or in their 7th game against Mississippi State. But his numbers a little bit better, at least in the big plays, than they were last year. Now, a lot of that was against Vandy, and that's, make of that what you will. He had 8 quarterback hurries against Texas A&M. Like, looking back at some of that stuff, like the fact that A&M was able to matriculate the ball at all on that final drive was insane, because they were doing everything in their power to double team him, and they were still not able to keep him from affecting things. Now, they're going to double team him, and that means someone, if it's Dallas Turner or somebody else on that defense, is going to have to step up and make plays and maybe open things up for them. But what Alabama does well on offense and defense with Bryce Young in the game, or the capabilities that they have on offense and what they do well on defense, kind of sets up for them to have a chance to succeed in this game. These are two teams that are really good at getting to the quarterback, 18th and 22nd in the country in sacks. So the team that's going to be able to protect their quarterback the best here is the team that is going to be able to find a way to win this game. I think all of us have this game on the card, apparently. I think that would be.
I think so, yeah.
And I think we're all kind of moving in the same direction. I am not as ballsy as you, but I might change my pick. I might just have to fade my initial instinct once we get to our picks.
This is going to sound very basic and like an easy thing to say, but I truly think it, like, whoever wins the turnover battle on this one is probably going to win this game. If Tennessee can force some turnovers, especially early, take the ball away from Bama and turn those into scores, not to mention get the crowd into it, obviously, like that's kind of their path to victory. The defense is going to have to play a little bit above their head, and they're going to have to take the ball away a couple times, whether that's a gift, whether that's making a play. Whenever those opportunities present themselves, Tennessee's defense is going to have to capitalize. And that can happen in college football, because college football is very weird. Weird things like that happen.
I would say look for, if Bryce Young isn't 100%, when a quarterback isn't 100% with their throwing arm, it impacts the way they throw the ball and also the velocity on the ball, the distance that they're throwing the ball. So there could be a situation where, as you mentioned, Bill O'Brien just kind of says F it and does want to not go conservative. But does Bryce Young have any limitations with his arm strength throwing it? Because that's when mistakes can be made, where it's like, hey, I made the right read. I know the right throw. I went to throw it. My arm didn't have the right juice on it. So like that's just something to watch, which that's the story. That's the storyline of the weekend, is when he comes out, we'll know pretty quickly. Like, he might just shove it in our faces, and on the first play throw like a 30-yard dart, and we're like, oh shit.
I don't think they're going to have any limitations on him. And like, I don't know why you play him if you've got limitations on him. So I think he'll be fine. He, like they said, he's had this injury before. I really honestly think he could have played against Texas A&M. I think they were trying to keep him from having to take potential hits in that game, and we will see what happens there. Moving on to our next game, big noon Saturday from the big house, number 10 Penn State at number 5 Michigan. Michigan a 6.5-point favorite. The total is 51.5. I will let Matt go first. However, I will set the stage with 2 pieces of information from our friend Chris Felica. First and foremost, a massive prove yourself game for both of these teams. Penn State strength of schedule so far 90th in the country, Michigan 95th. Now, I don't think you can blame either one of those teams. Michigan didn't know Iowa was going to be as stinky as they were, and Penn State did not know when they scheduled at least to go play Auburn at Auburn that Auburn was going to be more or less dead. Also, under James Franklin, Penn State is 10-13 against top 10 teams, and since upsetting Wisconsin to win the 2016 Big Ten Championship, the Nittany Lions are 0-9 versus top 10 teams. However, 5 of the losses have come by 4 points or fewer. Matt, what do you think is going to happen in the big house on Saturday?
Yeah, this game seems like a close one. It feels like, with the exception of that COVID year where Penn State got blown out at Michigan, I think it was the COVID year, that these two teams always tend to play each other pretty closely. Last year's Penn State should have won, kind of came right down to the wire, and Michigan ended up picking off that big play late and ended up pulling out the game. But I see this. I think that's a high total for these two offenses and what they're going to try to do. Michigan the last few weeks has been all about Blake Corum, and they haven't asked J.J. McCarthy to do too much. I don't think they're going to try and ask him to do too much against a pretty solid Penn State defense. And on the other side, Penn State's path to victory, and Phil and I joke about Sean Clifford, but the path to victory is asking Sean Clifford to manage the game, not to make a ton of big throws. And if they get down early, they're not going to have that great a chance of Sean Clifford's being asked to throw the ball all the time. So I think you kind of see an old school Big Ten slugfest, similar to not quite the extent of what we thought Iowa, Michigan would be, but like a good Iowa team versus Michigan might be, where both teams try to run the ball, protect the football. Jim Harbaugh in a game like this, without Josh Gaddis, where he's kind of more the primary play caller, I think is really going to want to protect the football and run it. And I don't think he's going to want to ask J.J. McCarthy to do too much, because when J.J. McCarthy's been asked to do too much so far this year, it hasn't necessarily worked out great. It hasn't been awful, but it hasn't been great. It's kind of been very just okay. And I think you want to try and limit what you ask him to do in a big game like this. So I look for this to be probably within the number. So I think I would lean Penn State getting the points and probably an under on that 51.5. I think with how much these two teams are going to want to run, that this probably moves the clock quite a bit and stays under that total.
Yeah, and you can't see my name right now, but it's Phil Big Red Dogs. So as
Clifford, I get it.
Clifford, Big Red Dog. So I've been Matt. Yeah, you're a smart guy. So
I am. Thank you.
I've been jokingly rooting for Clifford all year, mostly just to spite Matt. And it started with the Purdue game.
I should have won. He should have won that game.
Yeah,
Jeff Brom just gave the game away.
Handed the game away, and I was texting Matt very late at night, just rubbing it in his face, which was cruel of me. But again, I wouldn't have it any other way. So in this game, I mean, Clifford has been like Clifford this year: 9 touchdowns, 2 interceptions, 62% completion percentage. And honestly, he needs to do that for Penn State to be able to win this game. He doesn't need to be Superman. He needs to be a solid game manager, and they need to rely on Nicholas Singleton to, again, hopefully find some cracks in the foundations of Michigan's run defense, which against, albeit very bad teams, has been outstanding. And so, I look for Nicholas Singleton to make some big plays in this game, in which case it's going to force Michigan to load up the box a little bit and try to put the onus on Clifford. I think Clifford has a couple of Clifford plays in this game where it's he's kind of scrambling around, makes a dumb decision, but somehow a receiver comes down with it. And I text Matt that, wow, Clifford's so good. But I think he's someone who
I'll be rooting for him in this one, so I'll be happy to get those texts during this game.
Great. So I'm and on the flip side of that, so I believe he will make a couple of clutch plays, maybe a clutch run on a 3rd and 3 where he does a bootleg for some reason. So I'm really liking Penn State in this one, simply because this is J.J. McCarthy's first big game. So this is his first time that he hasn't had a safety blanket in a big game. Not that he's necessarily needed a safety blanket, because he's played pretty good football as of late. So this isn't me bashing J.J. McCarthy, but this is a huge game. Everything falls on him. So how does he react if things aren't going to plan? And to be fair, Penn State hasn't played anyone either. So it's these teams could be top 10 teams, or they could be
Purdue.
Top 25 teams.
Purdue is not a bad football team. They played Purdue.
Not a bad team, but they haven't played any, and they should have.
Yeah,
lost,
I know what
right?
you mean. I'm just standing up for Purdue.
It's fair.
Purdue guy, Matt Rooney. Big.
Yeah,
That's actually Matt Rooney's. That's actually Matt's favorite college football team that plays in the state of Indiana.
Don't lie to me.
So I will take a little bit of issue with what you said about JJ McCarthy, just from the standpoint of and Indiana is not good. I understand that. Blah 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
That said, they really struggled against Indiana in the first half last week. They opened the offense up a little bit. Second half, he was 15 of 17 for 175 yards, 3 touchdowns and a pick. Also, 6 of those completions went to Ronnie Bell. Like, novel concept, get the ball to good football players and let them do things. So they let him do some stuff last week in the second half of a game in which they struggled, and the signs were encouraging. Not going to sit here and say I'm going to trust him fully against a much better defense, but that was encouraging. The Michigan defense has been unbelievable so far this year. They are top 10 in EPA per play defense, per rush play defense, and per pass play defense. And I love the quality possession stat. Only 19.6% of possessions by the opposing offenses have been quality, which is the best number in the country. They also, and I haven't quite figured out how this is affected, if it's punting, field position, whatever, but their defense has the best average starting field position in the country. So teams have to try to sustain drives against Michigan and have been unable to do so. And Penn State's run offense has actually been a little bit boom or bust. They rank 112th in opportunity rate, which is the percentage of rushes that get 4 yards. Nick Singleton was awesome against Auburn, but Katron Allen's actually been better since that game. He was better against Central Michigan, at least equally as good against Northwestern. So they're going to need to get something going there. And the Penn State defense has been awesome in its own right as well for the most part. There were some things against Central Michigan, was a bit of a letdown after that Auburn game, I think, but by and large, they've been really good. They're 6th in quality possession defense. So these are 2 teams that don't allow the opposing offenses to do a whole lot. So I think the idea that, it's going to come down to, do you trust Sean Clifford, who's a guy who's got more experience, but is, inconsistent, or do you trust JJ McCarthy, who doesn't have a ton of experience, but might have a higher ceiling? And that's a might, because we just don't really know. I think we're all kind of in agreement here. I don't have this on my card. If it got back to 7, I might take Penn State a little bit, and I might really favor Penn State in that scenario. I mean, I probably still lean Penn State there, but I think these teams have enough quality potentially on offense that we could get above that 51.5. Under, not, I don't hate the under look there. I mean, this game's just kind of a stay away right now where it is for me.
I will say the numbers with the Michigan defense, I know they've been very good this year, and this is not I'm not trying to knock their schedule, because Penn State's schedule isn't that great too.
Schedule, it's fine.
But if you look at those, what off they played one legitimate offense this year that you could say is a good college football offense, and Maryland was able to do most. I mean, they're not going to try to run the ball a ton. They're going to try to throw. But Maryland was kind of able to do, for the most part, what they wanted. Talia's numbers weren't that great that day, but Michigan controlled the ball most of the game because they ran the ball so effectively. Maryland's offense wasn't by any means stymied or held. They put up 27 points. They're moving the ball on a final drive, and then Talia makes just an awful, awful decision and throws the ball right to a defender to ice the game. It's not like their defense has really been tested for the most part either, outside of one game. So while their defense has been good, I think they have a good defense. I think Michigan's a good football team, but I think this game tells us how good they are, because Iowa has the worst offense in football. Indiana is Indiana. I'm not even going to justify the non-conference teams by talking about them, because they're that bad. Their defense is done.
That's an explosion.
Seriously. So I'm not. I think this is not intended to be a shot at Michigan either. I think they're a very good football team. I think they have a very good defense, but I'm not ready to say I'm not ready to say they're defense fantastic or whatever yet, because they haven't done anything that outside of beat Maryland to get in a game that Maryland put up 28 points. So,
no, I think that's fair. I think that is a fair assessment of that situation. Moving on to the next game, the last of our unbeaten versus unbeaten games on the slate. Number 8 Oklahoma State at number 12 TCU. 3:30 p.m. from Fort Worth. TCU a 3.5 point favorite. The total 68.5. Phil, you start us off here. What do you think is going to happen in a Big 12 showdown?
So I'm just going with Big 12 shootout in this one. I am just going points, because I really like what I've been seeing from TCU's offense. I haven't loved what I've been seeing from Oklahoma State's non-Jim Knowles defense. And so when it comes to a game like this, afternoon Big 12, for me, these just screams. I think we talked about it on Tuesday. like a 28-24 like first half, and you're just like, whoa. And then it comes out in the second half. So this total could have been set at I think 73, 74. So I feel pretty comfortable with the over in this one. So that's honestly the root of my analysis. Is I'm just going into this one where I have no clue who's going to end up winning. It's going to come down to the last couple possessions. It's going to come down to a wonky turnover, like a big man fumble for a touchdown, because it's just weird Big 12 things like that. And so I'm just rooting for points here, because again, I haven't seen enough from either team to decisively say one has an outright advantage over the other. Partially that is these are just two teams that I haven't watched that closely this year. It's mostly been looking at box scores, mostly been looking at highlights, but I can't say I've sat down and watched either of these teams, through and through. But again, TCU looked pretty good last week. They've looked pretty good this year. Like, their offense is humming. So again, this is just going to be I think a classic Big 12 shootout.
Yeah, I'm just looking for points in this one. I think if I had to pick a side, this is not on my card. If I had to pick a side, I'd probably lean towards Oklahoma State with the points, just because I think I trust their defense maybe a little bit more. And while TCU's offense has been very good, their breakout game was against Oklahoma, whose defense we know nothing about. And the Kansas game, it came on late, but Kansas was able to play okay defensively early. So I'm not totally 100% sold on TCU's offense, but it's not like I'm sold on Oklahoma State fully yet either. I think this is a kind of a big prove-it game for both teams in both spots. I would lean towards an over, but again, Oklahoma State's defense hasn't been what it was last year, but I think it's still solid. I think they did some good things against Baylor, which is a fine offense. So I don't know. I lean towards an Oklahoma State here, but I just kind of want to watch this one and probably have no skin in the game, see what happens.
I talked about it the other day, Baylor game, they won by 11, I think, with 9 points off of special teams and a weird safety. Texas Tech, they won by 10 points because Texas Tech's third string quarterback hurt his ankle at the end of the game and couldn't walk. And for whatever reason, they wouldn't even let Donovan Smith try to do anything. So, yeah, Oklahoma State's had a strange season. Just how evenly matched is this particular game? SP Plus says final score 31-31. So, that obviously can't happen. But that lets you know how evenly matched they are. I think TCU is a little bit more balanced on offense. Oklahoma State is just 75th in rushing success rate, so they're a little Spencer Sanders reliant right now.
That's a risky game to play.
It is a risky game to play. He's also been really bad against man coverage. I don't know if TCU is going to throw a lot of looks at him or what they're going to try to do to affect him. But if they have the cornerbacks that can cover, that might be a way to success for them. But this is really going to be a battle of explosive plays. TCU is first in the country in explosiveness on offense, 12th in passing plays explosiveness, but they're also 129th in passing plays explosiveness defense. Meanwhile, Oklahoma State is 101st in passing and pass play explosiveness defense. So these are two defenses that have been just prone to giving up. Yeah, just giving up big plays and all season long. So the assessment, I love the idea of 28-24 first half score. And I'm just going to continue to vamp here for a second because I want to bring up FanDuel right now. And just because that's my baseline, I want to kind of see what they have listed as the first half total in that game, because you have now sparked an idea in my brain. Let's see. There we go. We go there. That's TCU.
Let's see. They don't have a first half
scoring. Okay, well, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go to betspurts.com.
That's where we go. Betspurts.com has all the lines you could possibly want from just about every sports book.
I'm going to track the track picks tab. If it wants to, my mouse on this computer wants to, man, this is just terrible podcasting. But, all right, fine. TCU. I see a first half total at DraftKings of 34 juice to the over.
Ooh.
Oof. FanDuel doesn't have it.
I think one of those two teams can get there by themselves.
34.5. DraftKings has
after my Bears money kicks in tonight. I'm going to pound that.
Yeah, that's a provisional. I might play that at some point. I'm not going to put that on the card for now, but that might just be a fun. Let's just go ahead and hope that we get some fireworks in Fort Worth. Remember, they did score so many points in a game once they ran out of fireworks at TCU. So. Hopefully that happens on Saturday. The final of our big games that we want to talk about this week, a Pac-12 game, which has admittedly lost some of its luster, but is still a very interesting game nonetheless. Number 7 Utah hits the road to go to Salt Lake City to take on number 20 Utah at 8 p.m. Utah is a 3.5 point favorite. The total is 64.5. Just another note from our friend the Bear, Chris Felica. Since 2015, there have been 15 instances where a team that is 6-0 or better was an underdog to a team with at least 2 losses. Those 15 teams have gone 3-12 straight up. So a lot to necessarily historical data to back up Utah in this spot. I want to go last on this because I want to see if you guys fall into my trap.
Oh God, I don't like.
I
traps.
Probably will. I feel like I've always fallen into your trap, man.
I feel like Dan
set spikes for me.
the line just stinks. Like, especially after the loss, the line just absolutely reeks. Why is Utah a 3.5 point favorite? I have no idea. I would have thought coming into this after the loss that it would at least be a pick'em, or USC would be. I know Utah is a really, really tough place to go and play, especially at night, and weird things kind of happen there, and they're really tough to beat there. But like, I don't know. Like, I know why I was a favorite, so I would tend to lose. I don't know why Vegas is telling me to take USC, but I don't. We talked about it. I mean, it's a big prove it spot for USC because this is big test on the road against a good, veteran, well-coached team. They kind of barely passed that test at Oregon State on the road. I don't know. I don't know why Utah is a 3.5 point favorite. I just don't understand it. I maybe lean towards an under here because it'll be a physical game. And last time we saw USC in a tricky road spot, they scored 4 points and took a late touchdown drive against a inferior opponent. So I think I probably towards an under, but this is a complete and total no bet. I'm just going to watch it and hope. I mean, Utah is going to be a desperate team because if they want to go to the Pac-12 title, they have to win out. I mean, they cannot lose. They had their one loss, and this has got to be it the rest of the way. So backs against the wall, scared of Utah. I don't know. This is weird.
I'm doing an emotional hedge here. So I do not want USC to win this game because I've been backing Utah this whole year. I've been backing Cam Rising this whole year, but like they've just not lived up the expectation. And for all intents and purposes, USC hasn't really lived up the expectation too. But I think the one thing that USC can do is like start to really put it all together offensively. So in like my heart, I'm saying I want USC to desperately lose to this one because I want Utah to get back on track. I don't think USC is a top 5 team just based on how they've been playing, a top 8 team really based on how they've been playing. But this is a way for USC, and this is kind of my head talking here, is almost like headlines the next day, like USC is for real. Like, despite the fact that Utah would be a 3-loss team at that point, I think the headlines coming out of this game could be that USC is for real. Just with the playmakers that they have on offense, I think this could be a week where they really click. Again, it's versus a good defense, but like Jordan Addison is good, Caleb Williams is good, Travis Dye is good, but like I don't want to do it. So what I'm going to do is just do an emotional hedge bet and bet USC plus 3.5 because then if it blows up in my face, USC loses. And if USC,
we should just take their money line at that point. The emotional hedge, take the value on the money line.
Yeah, I'll take the money line. I think I'll take the money line. I'm actually going to add that to my cards. This is a week where like I don't trust USC, but I also like Utah has been burning me lately. So like I'm also like feel scorned by Cam Rising ever since the Florida interception. He just like people don't forget Cam. I put a lot of stake in your awesome Buccaneer beard, and you've really let me down.
Yeah, that was a talk about a bad take from us on the preseason show.
Oh man. So Phil almost took the bait. He said one thing that I want to take exception to, but I was expecting you guys to use the word physical in a descriptive way about Utah because that is something that people love saying about Utah, particularly their defense. Is Utah is so physical on defense. And I heard that somewhere already this week, and it's just like, dude, they're physical because you think it's Utah and you think they're physical, but that's just not the case with this team this season. So I talked about opportunity rate, right? And that is the stat, which is what percentage of your runs go for 4 or more yards. Utah's defense is 93rd in the country in opportunity rate this year. Where does I have it written down somewhere? Man, I don't think I forgot to write it down. Florida, though, I know ran for 7, I think over 7 yards per carry. Oregon State ran for 4.5 yards per carry. UCLA ran for 5.3 yards per carry against this Utah defense. UCLA is 15th in offensive opportunity rate. Do you guys want to venture a guess as to where USC ranks on offense?
Aren't they near the top? I think he tweeted something about this.
They are number one. They the highest percentage of any team in college football of runs that go for 4 or more yards. And it's not like they don't run the ball at all. They are 5th in rushing attempts in the Pac-12. They are at their best when they are staying ahead of the chains and moving the football. They are 83rd in the country in passing down sack rate, USC. So when you can get them into situations where it's extremely likely they're going to be throwing the ball, that's when their offensive line has struggled this year. Otherwise, it's been okay. Hasn't been great, but like we knew it wasn't going to be a great line. But if they can stay balanced on offense, that's where USC is really going to thrive in this game. That said, it's not so much that I think Utah is physical. It's Utah. It's a physical team. I mean, they can run the ball. Offensively, they will try to run the ball on you. Tavion Thomas, what'd you say, Phil?
Are you falling into your own trap now?
No, I'm not. No, I don't have
trapper?
I would lean USC here. Like, to me, it would be like, okay, depending on what the price, what Utah money line price can I get? But it's probably not going to be a price worth paying because I do think like Utah wins this game by 3 points is completely realistic. You know what I mean? Like Utah 28-24, 27-24, like somewhere around that number I could totally believe. I don't want to mess with the spread here because I do think it's going to be a close game. I just wanted to dispel this myth that like Utah's defense is physical because they've been physical in the past, but we talked about it on Tuesday. They've lost some guys and they're just not quite as good on defense right now. SLC is a really hard place to play, though. I think they've only lost twice in like the last 4 or 5 years, something there. Like it's going to be a rowdy, raucous crowd. We'll see how USC handles it. And as much as I think Cam Rising's been fine. Like he threw one bad pick last week. Fine, not great, but like Chance Nolan threw 4 picks against USC in Corvallis. And if that doesn't happen, they probably win that game. If Cameron Rising protects the ball and they don't turn the ball over, I think they win the game, but I can't take a side one way or another on the spread or the total here. Yeah. I do think the over might hit, or the under might hit, but
we've talked about Baylor and how like they're a good program, but they're not kind of that upper tier where they can just reload year after year, where after like a big year where you go win a Big 12, that sometimes it takes kind of a year. You're not going to be bad the next year, but it takes a year to kind of get yourself back up there because the guys filling in oftentimes need a year to grow. Similar to Utah. Utah brought back Cam Rising. They brought back some of their bigger stars, but for the most part, a lot of that depth on the defense took some replacing, and I think they're kind of taking their lumps growing pains because they're not a top-tier program. They're kind of the next-tier program, and it takes them a year to reload and get them back to where they need. It's unfortunate it doesn't overlap with their offense having, all these weapons and the guys they brought back, but that's just kind of the case.
I totally agree with that assessment. And it's going to be a fun one to watch. I just hope, like, SLC, sneaky, like, night game spot I want to go watch a game. When that crowd at
Can't have any beer there, though, can you?
In Salt Lake. What'd you say, Matt?
Can I have a beer there? Probably not.
I don't know. Probably not inside the stadium. But my cousin is in Utah right now, and I think he was bought a beer, and I think the beer was called Polygamy, believe it or not. So,
interesting.
Make of that what you will. All right. Well, that's going to do it for our big games of the week. I know we always do our under the radar games. Phil, start us off. What did you have? I already forgot what you were going to say, so this is going to be a surprise to me.
So then I will have a stat for you. So what?
I love stats.
Okay, so name this team for defensive statistics. First in points per drive, second points allowed rate, first TD per drive, third 3 and outs, first in red zone efficiency, first in yards allowed per drive, and second in pressure rate.
Let me guess. Illinois.
Yeah, I was going to say, I remembered now when you started listing off those stats, I would have been able to guess it anyway.
There was no way this wasn't one of quote-unquote Phil's teams that he was talking about, so of course it's Illinois.
I know. Of course it's Illinois.
One of those games has to be wiped off the slate. They played Iowa last week. That does not count.
That is true. That is true. So Illinois plays Minnesota this week. Their quarterback is out, but Illinois has a chance to win the Big Ten West. They're ranked for the first time since 2011. I have loved seeing Illinois be like I keep saying this, like upper average tier of the Big Ten, which is just like, hey, they're not going to they're not going to win the Big Ten championship. They're not even probably going to normally be in contention to make the Big Ten championship game after this year. Shout out to the system that's in place right now. but I'm excited to watch them. And I pulled those statistics from Tom Fornelli on Twitter. So shout out him for pulling those up. And even if you, it's like if you take Wisconsin out of that, if you take Iowa out of that, like they're still really up in the top in the nation with all those stats. And I realize they haven't played very many good teams. I realize that their quarterback is out. But do we believe in Minnesota right now at 11 a.m. in Champaign? And have we gotten word, is the running back cleared to play?
I think Ibrahim's good.
The line suggests it. So like that gives me a little bit of pause, but like that's into the strength of Illinois, which is their defense. So I am just really excited to see this game because this is a decent test for Illinois, obviously. This is also could be a good spot for Minnesota. I just like that Illinois is ranked. It's fun being from Illinois. Again, no one in Illinois has cared about their football team since Juice Williams back in like 2006 or 2007, because it's a city right now where it's a Notre Dame. Like people like Notre Dame. No one really cares about Northwestern. And for a team to be in Illinois and Chicago, it's more fun when the city is like starting to root for a team, and Illinois is creeping back into relevance. And so it just makes it a much better spot, I think, for me personally and for Chicago when Illinois is like competitive, because then it's like you get like potentially like a Michigan Illinois game down the road where it's like we care about this game. It's not just a throwaway team. So it's been a long time since Illinois has been even in like mediocre. So the fact that they're now approaching like, hey, a top 30 team legitimately with their defense. Granted, they're starting a quarterback who started 2 years at Rutgers and was brutal because Tommy DeVito looks like he's going to be out. So I'm staying away from like betting this game completely. And again, I'm like saying Tommy DeVito
just going to watch and root for the Illini.
Yeah, just going to watch and root for the Illini.
So that's the thing. Like, so basically Art Sitkowski, he didn't really start 2 years at Rutgers. He really only started 1 year at Rutgers, and he had like a 47 as a freshman, had like a 47 completion percentage and 4 touchdowns and 19 interceptions. I think I looked this up the other day. And basically, if you look at the rest of his career log, it's like, we'll let you be on our roster, but we're not going to let you play meaningful snaps. I just was looking this up because someone was asking me about Tommy DeVito the other day, and I started looking at Sitkowski. If you wanted to, a weird sign of how COVID has changed everything in terms of roster math in college football. If you go to Art Sitkowski's player profile page on the Illinois website, he's listed as having 3 sophomore years because he redshirted one, he got the COVID year for another, and then he had his redshirt sophomore year. So this is his 5th year in college, and he's a junior. So it was freshman, sophomore, and this year's his junior year. So if that's just a great sign of how roster math in college football doesn't make any sense anymore, and hopefully I think this is the last year or two where we're going to have to really worry about this, but like I am longing for a day when it's freshman, sophomore, junior, senior, and then if you played 4 or fewer games, you redshirted, and you have 5 years of eligibility. Because everything else is just like the super senior thing, completely over my head at this point. Yeah. Matt, I know you said you were going to change yours because I didn't want to talk about Nebraska football, and you have.
I'll get in. I honestly didn't even want to talk about Nebraska. I wanted to talk about Purdue, but they're on my card. So
I peer pressured you into not talking about Nebraska.
I actually do have a pair of them, but I'll cover them kind of both quickly here. First, kind of forgot Duke UNC this week, and I know obviously that's basketball rivalry, but like this rivalry game actually can go a decent way. And which division are they? The Coastal? Yeah, they're in the ACC Coastal. I know they're in
the non-Clemson division, I think.
So they are in the non-Clemson division, and Miami and Virginia Tech both kind of stink this year. Georgia Tech is somehow 2-1 in the conference, and I think that's bound to correct itself at some point. Sorry about your under there, Dan. I don't think that's going to work.
Hey, it's still alive.
It's technically still alive, and Georgia Tech is still Georgia Tech.
Virginia is really bad. Anyway, sorry.
Duke lost to Georgia Tech last week in a spot that they probably should have won. They kind of sleptwalked, and Georgia Tech beat them. I don't expect them to sleepwalk at home against North Carolina team, and now that's a game that's kind of a must-win. North Carolina's been a lot of fun this year. Their offense is really, really good. They're 5-1, and really, if they can run the table and win the Coastal, that offense going up against Clemson's secondary would be such like that. I basically that's the storyline I'm rooting for because I think that makes for the most fun ACC championship game, even though it's a game Clemson wins and probably wins fairly easily. Like, it's a game that North Carolina has the blueprint where you saw Wake and Sam Hartman do it. Just attack the secondary, test them, and give your receivers a chance to make plays. North Carolina has the guys to do that. So I'm interested in seeing that. And then
quick before we move to your next game, did you see the helmets?
Oh yeah, like the
chrome,
the foot with the chrome,
with the Tar Heel,
they're very cool.
With the heel logo.
Very cool helmets. What'd you say, Phil?
I thought it was kind of dumb. I don't know.
You're kind of dumb.
I love cool uniforms. Like, it just I saw it kind of
cool. They're cool for a one-time thing. But the other one is the underwhelming SEC Bowl. I think it's Florida hosting LSU. Florida just kind
seriously, who throws a shoe?
LSU apparently. Two first-year head coaches kind of both need a win here. Obviously, neither of them are in trouble in terms of job security anytime soon. But just to kind of get that first year back on the right track after, I know Florida beat Missouri, but not really very impressively. They haven't really looked good since the Tennessee game. I know they looked really good in that one, but kind of outside of that game this year, they beat Utah week 1. They've looked good in 2 games and looked pretty bad the other 4. LSU looked just god awful against Tennessee, and now they have to go on the road to play a tough test at Florida. It's a get-right game, not a get-right game. It's a kind of save-the-season game for both of these teams. So I'm intrigued to see if they both look good, if one of them looks good, one of them looks bad, if Anthony Richardson decides to be the best player on the field again, just kind of how this game plays out, because both of these teams and coaches really need one here.
I'm with you. It's one of those games. It's like LSU is just the team that it's partially because Les Miles was their coach for a long time, but they're a team that just always finds themselves in weird games. And this game against Florida is one that, just like Auburn, it's always a game that kind of ends up being a little weird.
Yeah. Last year, I remember this one was very, very weird too.
Last year was the cleat.
No, that was 2 years ago.
Oh, I thought that was last year.
No, I think last year was at LSU. And it was the game that was probably going to get Coach O fired. And then LSU came out and won by a lot. Their offense looked great and saved his job for the rest of the season, or one more week. And then they fired him 1 week later.
Gotcha. That's what it was.
Weird games in this series.
It'll be one of those you turn on the fourth quarter and expect to see something really stupid happen there. For mine, I want to talk about something a little bit serious. And I'm not I genuinely want to talk about something serious in my spot here today. I've talked about New Mexico State. It's the second time I'm doing a New Mexico State game, but New Mexico State's playing their arch rival New Mexico this week. And they're doing something very cool. The game is going to be broadcast across the state of New Mexico in the Navajo language, Diné. And that's a really cool thing because the Native American languages are dying out at a really sad and alarming rate in the United States. Navajo, Diné, has the most speakers of an indigenous language with 170,000. However, only about 7,000 of them speak Navajo primarily. If you go through the educational history, particularly in the American West and Southwest, for a century, if you were in school, you had to be taught English. If you even were Native American, you couldn't be taught in your native language. Arizona doubled down, and they actually voted on a measure in 2000 that required English-only education in public schools. So these languages, sadly, are starting to die out in these communities. So it's a really cool thing that they have that they're doing this. It's not the first time they've done it. They've done it in the past. So it's not a new thing, but it's a really cool thing that they're doing. And to add a little bit of an interesting element to it, New Mexico State actually has 2 Navajo players on their roster. J.J. Jones III is from California. He's out with an injury, but they have an offensive lineman named Shiaza Pete, who is from Shiprock, New Mexico, which has a native Navajo reservation. He is the first person from his reservation to play FBS football. Unemployment in the Navajo Nation, which is mostly New Mexico and Arizona, officially sits at 11%, which is nearly triple the U.S. average. But the number doesn't account for over half the population as even part of the workforce. 55% of the population in Shiprock is unemployed. Half of the population lives in poverty in that area. For Native youths aged 10 to 24, suicide is the second leading cause of death, and the Native youth suicide rate is 2.5 times higher than the overall national average, making these rates the highest across all ethnic and racial groups. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that they do feel this kind of sense of bleakness about where they are, and if they're going to be able to get out of where they are, and growing up in poverty and being told that they are less than by all of the imagery around them. Look, we have really sketchy history with Native imagery in sports and that kind of stuff. And these native kids, they see this representation of that they're savages or whatever, and it makes them feel bad and their situations are bad and they end up being depressed and having issues with drugs and all that and that kind of thing. And so for this to be a thing where they get to hear their own language being called in a football game and they get to see someone representing them, showing them that it is possible to get out and go to college and be able to play football. I mean, he's a big kid. He's 287 pounds. New Mexico State was his only offer. It's just a really cool thing. And I'm all for, I think that sports just need to be more inclusive in general. I think that people that look like the three of us we are represented very well, but whether it's ethnic groups, whether it's women, whether it's the gay and lesbian community, sports should be for everyone, and everyone should feel at home and everyone should feel welcome watching and participating in these sports. And now they get to listen to it in their own language and to kind of bring back some of the levity with it. The game is on 107.3 FM, KCYZ, with Frank Kyler and Glenn King on the call. And an interesting thing about this, guys, they have basically created their own language within a language because football terminology is not in the Dene language. So they have kind of created code. So like they've likened it to like the Navajo code talkers during World War II. Like they have to come up with their own language within a language to broadcast these games in the Navajo language. So it's a very cool thing. The game's at 8:00. Hopefully New Mexico State will post some of the stuff online so that you can hear what the Navajo language has to sound like. And hopefully it'll be a good, fun game in the battle in the land of enchantment on Saturday night. And to bring us back into kind of a fun territory, that's what I have there. And I think it's time to talk about our cards for the week. I've got 4. Phil, how many do you have?
5, but one's a parlay.
Ooh. I only have 4 on the card.
Phil,
I mean, you guys go first, so I have the potential to add to my card. But yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah,
Phil, you start us off.
All right, so tonight Baylor -3 versus West Virginia. For me, that's one of those. It just seems like Baylor should win by more than 3. So I'm going just kind of gut. I'm going gut this week, so it's like I'm not doing too much. I'm doing research, but like with my picks, I'm not letting that impact my picks. So I saw Baylor -3. I'm like, yep. I'm doing I'll say that for the end. Added TCU Oklahoma State 34.5 first half over. Notre Dame -17. And then I officially added during this, it was on the fence about it, North Carolina -7. Again, I don't love the uniforms, but I like the opportunity there. I just, again, versus Duke team, I just don't think that they're going to be able to compete with the kind of Drake May offense that UNC is putting out there. And then my parlay, moneyline parlay, I'm taking Tennessee and Penn State. Just, you know what? It's just like, what, why not? I've been riding both teams all year. Just sprinkle a little money on both money lines there and see where we land.
If you're looking to still bet the Notre Dame game, Phil, it's 16.5 on FanDuel now, so you can get that half a point if you wanted it.
Well, I already bet it for -17.
Oh, bummer. Well, still push it. It's not like you lose a bet; you just push it. Dan, go ahead.
So I also have 4. I went 1 and 3 last week, so 3 of my picks. I'm going to kind of switch up how I do things. I am going to start with one that is a mild emotional hedge, but I legitimately think it's the right angle. I'm going to take Iowa State plus 9.5 in the first half against Texas. Iowa State did embarrass Texas last year and has won 3 straight against Texas, so maybe the motivation for Texas will be there to get some revenge. But I don't necessarily know that it works that way, and Texas is coming off a big win against a team that is really difficult. Like, if you look at Iowa's measurables, they're basically Iowa now with a bit more offensive capability, but not a ton. Iowa State, you can't move the ball on them. You can't score on them. They don't give up quality possessions. They're going to try to muck it up, slow the game down. Of the 9 games that they've lost since the start of 2020, they've only lost 2 of them by double digits. They just don't lose games by double digits. It's going to be the best 4-quarter challenge that we've seen for Quinn Ewers so far. Obviously, Alabama would have been, but he didn't play the full game there. So I like Iowa State to come in and just to muck this game up. Texas might get a late cover there. But as long as Texas gets out with a win after last week and the emotion that went into beating the ever-loving shit out of Oklahoma, 49-0. If you don't remember that, Texas beat Oklahoma 49-0 last week. So yeah, I like Iowa State plus 9.5 in the first half. Then my new strategy is I don't mind being on the ass end of a get-right game because I am backing teams who are playing teams who I don't trust. So Oklahoma, for some reason, is a 9-point favorite against Kansas. That means Dylan Gabriel is going to play. Fantastic. Jason Bean was great last week. He was good against Oklahoma a lot. Like the only good game he played last year was against a better Oklahoma team than the one that he is playing on Saturday. And until Oklahoma's defense, Kansas might not be able to stop Oklahoma's offense if Dylan Gabriel plays. That's a fair assessment. But until Oklahoma shows that they can stop anyone, let alone a good, well-coached offense like this Kansas team, I'm going to take the 9 points all day. Michigan State is awful, guys. Like Michigan State is really bad.
They are bad.
They gave up the most passing yards per game in the country last year, but if you looked at their advanced numbers, they weren't that bad comparatively, like 80th, 90th in those ranges. They're actually somehow in the advanced numbers worse as a pass defense, and they get a Wisconsin team that the dead cat bounce with the new coach might be legitimate. Now, granted, I don't feel you never heard that one before. It's called a dead cat bounce. Yeah, when you fire a coach, it's the dead cat bounce. Look it up. But they crushed, like they did what they had to do. They actually absolutely just demolished a bad Northwestern team last week. More importantly, Graham Mertz played his best game probably. He definitely played his best game since his first one against Illinois. And going up against a bad pass defense, it's always possible that Graham Mertz is just going to throw 3 interceptions and be terrible. Sure, I get it. Maybe this is a get-right spot for Michigan State, perhaps, but I don't believe it. And until they do, I'm just going to keep fading them because this might be they get blown out again and an assistant coach somewhere takes the fall for this because they can't get rid of Mel Tucker. And then, and yeah, they can. I mean, they're kind of pot committed there. And then the last one, I don't have the same guts that you guys do, but I kind of added it last night. Alabama might beat Tennessee by a touchdown or more, but it's a home game. It's the biggest game in Tennessee in 20 years, something like that, like for this program
since the national championship.
Yeah, I mean, potentially, like, but regardless, huge game for them. I think they have the ability to move the ball on Alabama. I think the Alabama secondary is not as great as we thought they might be this year. If they can protect Hendon Hooker, I think they're going to be able to score. I don't know that they're going to win. I think they're very live to win, and I just don't necessarily think they will. So I'll take the coward's way out, and I'll just take the 7 with Tennessee. So there you go. Iowa State 9.5 and the plus 9.5 first half at Texas, Kansas plus 9 at Oklahoma, Wisconsin minus 7.5 at Michigan State, and then Tennessee plus 7 against Alabama.
So I miscounted. I have 5, not 4, but still not that. And I don't think I ended up adding any from your guys' picks here. Similar to Phil, I like Notre Dame, but I'm not going with their. I'm not going with the minus 17, 16.5. I'm taking minus 9.5 in the first half. I don't think this was on air. I think I talked about this with you guys before the show. But basically, Stanford, their 3 games against good teams this year, against Washington, Oregon, USC, have faced 10 or more point deficits at halftime. They were down 21 to USC. I think it was 27 to Oregon. They were down 10 to Washington. I think Notre Dame is more of those teams than Oregon State or a Colgate. So I like them at home in the first half. I think, like Phil was talking about, Notre Dame should be able to run the ball against Stanford. Their offense has been so much better lately. Both sides of the ball have been a lot better lately, but they've been able to control games with their line of scrimmage. So I like them laying the 9.5 in the first half. I'm going with the Vols plus 7. We talked about it enough. I think if there's ever going to be a time, this is the time. And I think that's a lot of points for how well they're playing and how limited Alabama's offense has been. Taking Purdue minus 13.5 at home against Nebraska. I think Purdue's kind of found something here. They've been playing pretty good football all year. The 2 losses they have now look pretty okay. They're to a top 10 team in Penn State at home by 3, and they're on the road at a weird location in Syracuse to a team that beat them at the buzzer. So I like Purdue's team, and I know Nebraska's gotten the new head coach bump, but it hasn't really – that's going to wear out eventually. I just think Purdue's a better football team, and I think their offense is really firing on all cylinders. Dan, I'm betting the Kansas-Oklahoma game with you, but went just a little bit of a different route. Jason Bean over 240 passing yards. I don't trust Oklahoma secondary. He threw for 286 against TCU last week. I think at the very least, this is going to be a game that he's going to have to throw because they're going to have him throw early on because that's how you beat Oklahoma. And if Oklahoma gets up, scores some points with Dylan Gabriel, and he's back healthy, then he's going to have to throw to get Kansas back in the game. So I like that over 240. And I'm just taking this over out of principle. The Washington-Arizona over is at 72. I'm going to take it. So I have to. It's 72. I have to do it. Well, I mean, Washington's offense is objectively really good. There's a chance they put up 50 by themselves in this one. Michael Penix Jr. throws for 330 a game. And Arizona has been a frisky football team, and their offense has been able to do some things. So I'm going to take it. I'm going to take that over. I'm going to plug my nose and take an over 72. And I don't believe – I'm going to double check. I don't think this is a Pac-12 after dark game, which is just one of the biggest misses in the history of Pac-12. No, it's a 4:30 game. Like it's one of the biggest misses in the history of Pac-12 scheduling that this wasn't reassigned to Pac-12 after dark. But yeah, that's what we got.
What is Pac-12 after dark? Is it is it the Colorado Cal game?
Oh God, that
Colorado.
No, that's an early game, I think.
Yeah, I almost got Cal in that game, but then I'm like, I don't want to bet Cal.
Pac-12 after dark is an 8 o'clock or 9 o'clock for you to Oregon State, Washington State kickoff. So that's not a bad bet.
That's not terrible.
But Washington, Arizona should have been it.
Oh man, Colorado and Cal.
I think that's like a noon kickoff local time.
Kick in Berkeley. What is
4 people are going to watch that game?
What is the?
Well, I thought Colorado had it at home.
Sorry. Yeah, sorry. You're correct.
Either way, there's going to be 4
noon local kick.
I flirted with Colorado and the 15.5 points because the new head coach bump, but I couldn't pull the trigger.
Yeah, I thought about, and this will be a segue. I thought about a Jaden Ott rushing over for my Prize Picks entry because Colorado's rush defense has been absolutely atrocious. I just don't want to touch the interim coach thing.
The interim coach bump
off of bye week too.
Right? It's been on fire so far this year, so I'm not going anywhere near.
Like Colorado, off of bye week interim coach. The total is 48 there. I mean, Cal scored a lot of points against Arizona, so maybe that's what the thinking is there. But man, that's an under. I got to do some digging on that.
It's probably an underplay, but yeah, I didn't want to touch it.
So that segues us into Prize Picks. I'm just because my betting picks have been so shitty. I'm just going to brag that my Prize Picks leg hit easily. Last week it was Bijan Robinson. I was very happy to get that one, and my Frank Harris one also hit. But the reason I wanted to bring this up is because I was going to text you guys or hit the group chat on the DMs and Twitter. The last play of the first half, so Oklahoma I think punted. So Texas has the ball with 10 seconds left in the first half, and Oklahoma just sends and it's not even close to midfield. Like they're deep in their own territory. And Oklahoma just puts everyone back in coverage. So they just gave the ball to Bijan, and he got like 18 or 20 yards. And I was like, that's gonna clinch it. I was like, that'll be the Prize Picks leg. There we go. We're good. So
we unfortunately fell 4 receptions short or 4 completions short from Hendon Hooker because that game got out of hand. That was Phil. That was like my Hendon Hooker pass. That's like when I took his pass yards over against Ball State in week 1, and he was 40 yards away at halftime and then just didn't play in the second half.
For what it's worth, ESPN Plus or SP Plus, I keep saying that, has the final score 30-18 in the Arizona Colorado game, which is right on the total. So
okay.
You guys are both I'm going to throw this out there since you put it out there as one of your bets. Do we want to add Jason Bean as our community group pick?
Ooh, I like that.
I like
the karma of the community. I think the last time we had a community pick, we won the Prize Pick. So I'm in.
I believe that is accurate.
The Duke one,
yeah.
Oh yeah, the Duke under. He had a great first half and then completely didn't throw the ball anymore. All right, so you guys, I'll go first here because you guys are just going to be Notre Dame homers with yours. So
Jason Bean is 240.5 on Prize Pick. So just throwing that
because
out there. No, well, my betting total was on 40.5 price. That's officially on. I'm looking at it now. I'm putting the card.
Well, no. That's why I brought it up because I remember seeing 240.5 for Jason Bean on Prize Picks when you said you were betting it. So throw it to the card. Mine is actually from tonight. I didn't know this was a thing that they did on Prize Picks, but I'm going through trying to find something I liked. So give me the best name for a position in college football. Give me West Virginia kicker Casey Legg. Over 1.5 made field goals against Baylor. He's 8 for 8 on field goal attempts this year. West Virginia, they are 11th in quality possessions on offense, but 54th in points per quality possession. Baylor, 84th in quality possessions allowed, but 48th in points per quality possession. Neil Brown never met a bad field goal attempt that he did not like. So I think that anytime they're going to drive, Baylor's going to bow up on defense, and we're going to see Casey Legg attempt several field goals in this game. So I figured, why the hell not? Let's get it over with. Let's find out if we've got a chance to win or not by the time we get to tomorrow. So Casey Legg, West Virginia kicker, over 1.5 field goals made tonight versus Baylor.
That's like my favorite kicker name since Chris Blewett. Back to the Pittsburgh kicker.
I was in a bar in Pittsburgh when he missed a kick to win a game. That was kind of fun.
yeah, it's just if you're that, you just can't be a kicker. Like
you can't play sports.
Can't. No,
for the record, I mean, it kind of worked out for Pittsburgh last year having a quarterback named Pickett. I'll just put that out there.
Oh, true. I didn't even think about that. That was good. He was pretty good. So my pick is, again, a Notre Dame homer pick. So Lorenzo Styles at 44.5 yards receiving. So he's hit that in 3 out of 5 games this year. But again, like last week, I tried to have like a shock, like clip it. And again, it didn't happen. I said Chris Tyree was going to break a long run for a touchdown when he dropped a screen pass, which would have been like a 55-yard touchdown. So I was robbed of that. So I'm going to try to do that again this week, where I think Lorenzo Styles takes one of those fake handoffs where it's actually just a forward little like toss, which is technically a forward pass, and takes it 40 plus yards to the house. So I think he gets almost all of this in one single play. But look for him to have like 2 to 3 catches to hit this over, simply because Notre Dame's going to pound the ball early and often, which is going to open up the play action game as well as some like outside zone running with some wide receivers. So I think this one hits in the first half pretty easily.
I am going with you can call it a Notre Dame homer pick if you want, but I don't think betting on Michael Mayer is really a homer pick more as it is just I'm betting on the best tight end or one of the 2 best tight ends in college football. One of the 2. You can make the argument. He's not the head over. He's not the best or easily the whatever.
Won't argue that he's number.
Him and Brock Bowers are by far the 2 best tight ends.
I won't argue that he's lower. I won't make an argument that he's lower than number 2 on that list.
There you go. He has been
number 2, but
he's been fantastic all year. It's the reception total, I think it said was 6.5. Only 5 against Ohio State, but he had 8 against Marshall in that awful game. The Cal game, he only had 2. I kind of take that. I don't really consider that one because that was a first half where the shell-shocked offense. The second half, the offense just kind of decided to run the football. But the last 2 games, he's got 7 and 11. And really in that BYU game, they've been finding their offense better and better. But the last 2 games that BYU especially won, it's just been the game especially. We know you're going to try to take Michael Mayer away from you, but we're going to run the football well enough that you can't fully do it. And then when you load the box, we're just going to throw the ball to Michael Mayer. And Drew Pine loves throwing the ball to Michael Mayer. Who wouldn't? He's a quarterback's best friend. Over 6.5 receptions against the Stanford team that we talked about earlier. Doesn't stop the run very well. Notre Dame's going to be able to run the ball early, and then I think that's going to open up a lot of things for Mayer. Pine loves throwing to Mayer. Easy. Over 6.5.
Realize when you're talking 2 Notre Dame receiving overs, if I'm not mistaken, that's kind of contrarian. So I love it. Like, let's do it. Now, granted, it was 44.5 receiving yards is not a ton. So, like, that can be 2 or 3 catches, and Mayer can have 6. Like, cool, but, like.
Phil, how close is Mayer to the Notre Dame tight end receptions record? Did he hit it, or is he 2 receptions away?
So I think he hit I want to say he hit the he hit one of them this past weekend. I don't know if it was receptions or touchdowns, but he's very close. I think he's like 3 or 4. That's got to be receptions.
He'll set it in this game easily.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild that he's going to set all the Notre Dame tight end records like in 2.5 seasons.
Midway through his junior season.
That's kind of insane. Maybe he should come back next year. We should get an NIL fundraiser to keep him back. Make it more fruitful than a first round salary.
NFL.
I know, Phil. Selfish. But yeah, that's what I got. I think I like this Prize Picks entry a lot. And I love the karma of throwing a kicker in there. I think that helps us out.
We have a kicker. We have a community pick. Like, if not now, when, friends?
The community kick is a backup quarterback going against Oklahoma. I'd love it.
Yeah, why not? I mean,
a Kansas backup quarterback. A Kansas backup quarterback.
Kansas backup quarterback, and I'm taking Kansas and the points in this game. There's no way that could go bad.
How could this lose?
How could this very clearly stupid idea that I have lose?
Also, Notre Dame going against the worst rushing defense in the country when they've been a power rushing team. Matt and I being like,
what can go wrong?
Man,
we like to have fun here.
We're smart.
I really feel like maybe I don't know if I want to take that Cal or not. I'm like, it's like one of the better rushing teams versus one of the worst rush defenses in college. Maybe I think the worst rush defense in college.
Don't jinx yourself.
And I just can't. I don't know if I can do it or not.
I can't wait for the games this weekend. They're going to be so good. I can't wait for Tennessee, Bama.
Oh, it's going to be so good running through the tee. Oh, so good. And we will be back on Tuesday to recap everything that happened in the week of college football, including the biggest game of the week, of course, North Dakota State, South Dakota State, the Dakota Marker game. Cannot wait to watch that on another screen as I watch Tennessee and Alabama, TCU, Oklahoma State, and a whole host of other great college football games. You guys have anything else you want to add?
No, I'm good. Good luck this weekend.
Thanks.
Let's win our bets. Let's win some prize picks money.
Let's win a prize picks entry, and let's all hope that our teams win. Go Irish. Hook 'em horns. For Phil, for Matt, I'm Dan. We will talk to you on Tuesday.